Welcome to this grand finish. Welcome to this grand finish. Welcome to this grand finish.
Hello again. I'm Robert.
I'm Yudee.
This is our intermediate English grammar test tutorial number 1. We highly recommend that you choose your answer before we give you any clues. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Directions. Choose the best option to complete each sentence.
Number 1.
The oil business has been growing quickly here. One of the first energy companies, blank, in this area in 1990. A.
Arrives.
B.
Arrived.
C.
Has arrived.
D.
Arrive. As usual, we're going to highlight certain key words and phrases to help you solve these items.
Here is your first clue.
We believe the best strategy in a test-taking situation is to eliminate the obviously or probably wrong choices first. If you follow this strategy, you have a much higher percentage chance of getting the correct answer. This phrase is the subject for the second sentence. Even though the final word before the blank is a plural noun, the key word in this phrase is the first word, one. Option D would only work if the subject were plural. However, it's not. This is a singular subject. Next, let's look at the time clue.
The time clue 1990 tells us that something happened in the past.
Indeed it does. Therefore, the present tense cannot work. We're left with two choices that have verb tenses that could be possible for something in the past. Present perfect is okay to use for a past event if you don't know the time. On the other hand, we do know the time in this case. B is the best choice. Let's hear number 1 the way it should be.
The oil business has been growing quickly here. One of the first energy companies arrived in this area in 1990. Number 2.
Many cultures have traits that are well known to visitors. For example, Thais are famous for blank smiles. A.
They.
B.
Theirs.
C.
Their.
D.
Their.
You may notice in this photograph that not all of these people are Thai. One of them is me. This is teacher Yudee's family. We'll begin by discussing one of the vocabulary words here, the word traits. This word means characteristics, or the way people behave. The key word that is critical in order to solve the grammar for this question is the word smiles. It's a noun and it ends the sentence. Option A is a subject pronoun and it cannot work before the noun at the end of the sentence. Option B cannot work because it is not an adjective or a determiner. It is a pronoun.
Option D, there is an adverb which we cannot use at this point in the sentence.
The correct option is C. There is a determiner. It tells us whose smiles.
Let's hear number 2.
Many cultures have traits that are well known to visitors. For example, Thais are famous for their smiles. Number 3.
Brad recently left his job at the firm even though he blank there for over 20 years. A.
Had worked.
B.
Has worked.
C.
Working.
D.
Was worked. This is a complex sentence with two clauses. The independent clause begins with the word Brad. That is the name of a man. The dependent clause begins with the pronoun he, which refers to Brad. This is the first clue that we need. After the word he, there is no verb. We need a verb in order to complete the second clause of the sentence. Option C, working, is not a verb. It is either a noun or an adjective if it's not accompanied by the helping verb be.
Option D, was worked, is passive voice and it doesn't work in this context.
Correct. Brad actively worked. In order to choose correctly between options A and B, we need to look at the time clue, recently left. Recently means a short time ago. For that reason, we cannot use be has worked because it's in the present perfect. If he hadn't left his company yet, we could use it. If he were still working there, we could use it. But he left already. A is the best option. This is how number 3 should go.
Brad recently left his job at the firm even though he had worked there for over 20 years.
Number 4.
I took some photos, but they are all boring. I didn't photograph. Blank. Interesting. A.
Nobody.
B.
Something.
C.
Nothing.
D.
Anything. As you can see, the answers for question 4 are all indefinite pronouns. That means they don't specify anything exactly. The only key word that we need to solve this sentence is didn't. This critical helping verb helps us to identify that this is a negative sentence. Even though there is nobody in the pictures, we cannot use the word nobody. It is only used with a positive statement. Similarly, we cannot use the word something. Like A, even though there is nothing in these photos, we can't use it because it can only be used with positive sentences. Our only option and the correct option is D, anything. Just remember, when we use a negative sentence or the not after the helping verb, there are certain indefinite pronouns that we can't use. Let me give you some examples of the incorrect choices using these photos. We would use a positive sentence formation for nobody. For example, there is nobody in these photos. For B, let's try this sentence. I saw something interesting that day, but I didn't photograph it. And C is an easy one. Similar to A, we can say there is nothing in these photos. The only choice possible here, due to the negative structure of the second sentence, is anything. Here is item number 4, the way it should be.
I took some photos, but they are all boring. I didn't photograph anything interesting. Number 5.
Many people think that video games are too expensive. I don't agree. Blank those people. A.
With.
B.
From.
C.
To.
D.
For. You may notice that all of the choices are prepositions.
When you have a verb followed by a preposition and that preposition changes the meaning of the verb,
that's called a phrasal verb.
There are some prepositions that work with agree, however, from and for do not work. Those prepositions just simply aren't used after the word agree. It is possible to use the preposition to after the verb agree. However, we only use it when we agree to specific conditions or rules. We need to look closely at the object of this sentence, those people. You can't agree to people. The correct preposition after agree is with.
The best choice for number 5 is this.
Many people think that video games are too expensive. I don't agree with those people. Number 6.
I am not certain if I will commit to that. I'll need some time to think. Blank it. A.
With.
B.
About.
C.
At.
D.
To. We're going to highlight a phrase in the first sentence that has nothing to do with solving it. However, it's good for background information.
Commit to do something equals promise to do something.
We see once again that all of the options in number 6 are prepositions. Once again, we're looking for a phrasal verb. Generally speaking, changing the preposition after the verb in a phrasal verb will change the meaning of the verb. However, in this case, none of the other options work. The only one that works is about. Another way to use the final 3 words in this sentence is as a command. If you want to persuade someone to do something, you present to them your side of the idea, your opinion, and then say, think about it. Let's fill in the blank for number 6.
I am not certain if I will commit to that. I'll need some time to think about it.
Number 7.
It gets very dark in the forest at night. You will be able to see better if you blank a flashlight. A.
Bring.
B.
Brought.
C.
Had brought.
D.
Will bring. The first clue that we need to solve for the blank is the word if.
That makes it a conditional sentence, doesn't it?
Indeed, it does. There are many kinds of conditional sentences. In order to solve conditional sentences, we need at least one clue. That clue can be found in the verb tense of the first part of this sentence. The words will be are in the future simple tense, which tells us that this is a first conditional sentence. Let's look at the rules for first conditionals. A first conditional sentence goes something like this. We have if plus subject plus verb 1, a comma, subject, will plus verb 1. In the case of this sentence, you can see it's reversed. The second formula is the one that we see in number 7. The independent clause begins with the future simple tense. There's no comma, then there's an if, and then the second clause. You can see from the formula the second clause requires verb 1, or the present simple tense. In first conditional sentences, we do not use the simple future twice. Because we already have a future simple construction in the first clause, we can't use it in the blank. Had brought is the past perfect tense, and that's only used in third conditionals, or in mixed conditionals. Option B, brought, is in the past tense, and that is used for second conditionals. What we're looking for is the present simple tense. A is the best choice. Let's hear the two sentences for number 7 correctly.
It gets very dark in the forest at night. You will be able to see better if you bring a flashlight. Number 8.
If a drought came to this area again, people blank without water for their farms. A.
R.
B.
Will be.
C.
Would be.
D.
Were.
Similar to question 7, the most important keyword in number 8 is the word if.
That signifies another conditional sentence.
Indeed it does. And how do we solve conditional sentences?
Look for the verb tense.
The verb in the if clause is the word came. Came is the past simple tense for the verb come. Because it's the past simple tense in the if clause, we know it's a second conditional sentence. Second conditional sentences can be written in two different ways. Number 1, you can begin, like in this sentence, with the if, the subject, past simple tense, then you would have a comma, the subject, then would plus the bare infinitive. Another way of writing a second conditional sentence is to begin with the subject, then would plus verb 1, no comma, then if, subject, and the past simple tense. Now that we have these formulas, we can solve the question. R is in the present simple tense, and we cannot use it here. We can only use the present simple tense for first and zero conditionals. Option D, were, is in the past simple tense. Remember, according to the formula, the independent clause in a second conditional sentence needs would plus verb 1. We can't use will be because it doesn't work in this sentence. We're left with the answer C, would be.
The whole sentence for number 8 should be:
If a drought came to this area again, people would be without water for their farms. Number 9.
Considering all that has happened lately, it can be said that things are looking very blank nowadays. A.
Differ.
B.
Differently.
C.
Difference.
D.
Different. This question tests your ability to recognize which word part should go in the blank. In order to determine the correct word part, we need some clues. The most critical clue here in this sentence is the verb phrase, are looking. Are looking in the context of this sentence means the same thing as the word seem. Now let's look at the choices.
A is incorrect. Differ is a verb, and we already have the verb phrase in this sentence.
Option C, difference, is a noun. It just doesn't work in this context. We're left with two options, B and D. In this case, as we said, are looking is used to mean the same thing as seem. This is because the subject of the sentence is the word things, which means your environment, circumstances, happenings, everything that surrounds you. If the subject of this clause were people, then it's possible to use are looking in an active sense. But here, because of the subject being your environment or happenings, it must be used in the stative sense. And for that reason, we cannot use the adverb here. We must use the adjective different. Now let's hear the whole sentence for number 9.
Considering all that has happened lately, it can be said that things are looking very different nowadays. Number 10.
The neighbor's dogs have been regularly running into our yard. So I am going to build blank to protect the flowers that my wife planted. A.
Fence.
B.
The fence.
C.
Some fence.
D.
A fence.
To give you some background regarding the context, neighbor's dogs are dogs that do not belong to you. And if they are coming into our yard, that means they're invading your property. They may pose a danger to your children, or in this case, they may do some damage to your garden. Dogs love digging in gardens. Question number 10 evaluates your ability to recognize when or if to place an article before a noun. All of the options have the same noun, fence. Fence is a singular countable noun. It cannot go here without some kind of article or determiner. Because it is countable, we cannot use the word some before it. If we used the word fencing, then we could use some. Some fencing, that would be acceptable. We're left with using the article the or the article a. In the case of this sentence, it is the first time that we use the word fence, therefore we must use the word a, not the article the.
Let's complete number 10 and read it for you.
The neighbor's dogs have been regularly running into our yard, so I'm going to build a fence to protect the flowers that my wife planted. That's it for this video.
Thanks for learning with us at Eastland English.
Please subscribe to our channel and leave a like under our video. Don't forget to tell us your score. Keep up to date with Eastland English.
When you subscribe,
Click the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we release a new video. See you next time.
see you around.
Bye-bye.
Bye.